All right, here we are, back for the final chapter, chapter number 25. Away we go. Late spring is such an enchanting season for a wedding, especially one held on the lawns of Northwich Hall, and the Lovecraft family was thrice blessed to celebrate the unions of their youngest daughters to fine, upstanding men. The delightfully inventive Miss Emma had been matched to a brave and distinguished young soldier, Richard Marsh, who was the pride of the highly regarded Marsh lineage of Upper Wantley. The imposing, handsome figure of Miss Mary, her stark white hair braided and garnished with tiny blue forget-me-nots, balanced well with the fine trim and dashing manners of Mr. Frederick Darling, who had taken command of his uncle's firm after the sad incarceration of his brother, aunt, and uncle at Broadmoor Asylum. Lastly, Miss Jane had secured the affections of the man known to all as Mr. Aloysius Blackwood, who had been previously thought to be peevish and sour, but had since remedied that poor reputation by showing himself as helpful, convivial, and pleasant to even the most humble farmer or smallest child. In point of fact, it was Mr. Blackwood who suggested they invite the entire population of Dunham County to the wedding, and certainly no one had refused this generous offer, for the grounds were filled with people, food, drink, music, and much rejoicing. None could be happier than Mrs. Lovecraft, who sat in pride of place in the front row, awaiting the arrival of Father Noonan with as much patience as a child needing a chamber pot. Her pink batiste gown and gloriously feathered bonnet lent her the appearance of a fine, high-born lady, but her squirming undermined all attempts at decorum. To her left sat Mr. Lovecraft, dressed in his cleanest jacket, and he appeared unmoved by any romantic motions. In fact, he wore the countenance and bearing of a man heading forth to a relaxing vacation, where all worries and cares would soon lose their sting, and he could retire in peace to read his books and write his memoir and tend his precious bees. That Father Noonan had not yet arrived did not vex him, for the day was too clement and merry to wish away. A sweeping glance over the crowd showed the entire village to be in attendance, save for two. Mrs. Runkle and her grandson Marvin had not been seen since early spring. Some said she'd gone to London to live with a sister after Marvin had lost his dear friend, and others claimed that they had ventured south to take residence with a cousin in Tasmania. The most imaginative children said that Mrs. Runkle had been transformed into a Grimm and whisked away to hell on a raft of bird wings, but no one paid much attention to their beastly fairy tales. "Oh, Harriet," said Mamma, bending her head to the right to speak, her eyes still locked on the enchanting scene of my three sisters, decked in finery and flowers. "This is such a joyous day, do you not think? To see your sister Jane installed as the lady of Northwich Hall, and Mary so suitably matched to a man of business, and even Emma bursting with love at the sight of her exquisite soldier. Oh, my heart could not be lighter. I have done my duty very well, don't you think? Very well indeed." The three couples waited patiently at the lectern, which had been employed to play the part of an altar and placed at the garden's edge, with the trout pond providing a very pleasing background. Emma, Mary, and Jane were garbed in matching whites, while Mr. Darling wore a deep blue suit, the impostor Mr. Blackwood in grey, and Mr. Marsh in his red coat. As a set, they did look quite splendid. "It's all perfect," I agreed. "And I am sure you will be well taken care of, if not a little lonely, once your father dies and leaves us penniless," my mother continued. Papa, sitting on her other side, raised one hoary eyebrow, but said nothing. Mamma continued, "Jane will find a little corner of her great mansion in which you might while away your final years in the company of books. Would that not make you happy? You have always appreciated your solitude." "It would make me happy enough," I replied. "We must accept that there is no match for you, my dear," my mother continued, her voice now adopting the timbre of a lament. "You are destined to be alone, I'm afraid, and I only wish I had tried harder to keep you from being so plain and dull." She pinched my cheek. "If only we'd marketed your dullness as predictability, and your plainness as constancy, some man might have fancied you." "It was never my intention to marry just any fellow who would take me," I replied with a laugh. But she wasn't listening. "I should have recognized that your interest in literacy and philosophical contemplations might make a gentleman uneasy, and I should have spoken of your tedium and solitary ways as inoffensive. Perhaps if your father had not taught you to read at such an early age, you would not have frightened off so many potential suitors with the strength of your opinions, and—" Her words trailed off as a well-dressed gentleman sat down beside me. I did not at first recognize him, His features were balanced and measured and quite stable, without a single wobble or change of color. He had no hair, but he wore an expensive beaver hat to cover his bare head, as well as a modest frock coat in a subdued charcoal gray over his athletic frame. He'd adopted the face from the portrait in the ballroom, but he'd added a dash of comeliness about the bland features and wore a dimple on his chin, and his eyes remained the rich, warm amber that I'd grown to love. "Hello, Harry," he said, in a voice that was, all at once, deep and beguiling, quiet and restrained. I gave a little gasp of delight and surprise. He grinned. "It's a fine day for a wedding, isn't it?" "How is this possible?" I said. "With a lot of practice and a great deal of difficulty," he replied. "I admit I don't really know how long I can stay." I traced my fingers across his hand and felt the tide of magnificent joy flooding over his skin. "And who is this?" said Mamma, peering around my shoulder. The heat of her interest seared the back of my neck. He bowed his head. "I am Nathaniel Blackwood, madam, the elder brother to the man who will be marrying your Jane," he said. Mamma fluttered her hands in rapid excitement. "Oh, sir, oh, then we are to be family! What a delight it is to make your acquaintance! This is my eldest daughter, Harriet." "Yes, I know," he said. "We've met many times." "Have you?" my mother said, turning on me as if I were a traitor. "Harry, you have never spoken to me of this. What do you do, sir? Have you come to visit your brother and rejoice in this union?" "No," said Nate, and then looking to me said, "I've come to ask Harry if she will consent to take me as her husband." It is a rare occurrence for my mother to be rendered speechless, but she was struck perfectly, beautifully mute in that moment, and so was I. "Well?" Nate pressed. He gave a bashful smile and said, "I've been practicing, but this takes a lot of concentration. The headaches are coming. There isn't much time." He stood, pulled me to my feet, and lowered himself to one knee. "Harriet Lovecraft, will you marry me?" I gaped and stammered. "But how will we live?" "In Northwich Hall," he said. "Technically it's my house. I bought it. And there's plenty of room. If we stay to the cellar and the library and the pond, I doubt anyone will even notice we're there." I bent to him so that our voices were only for each other. "And if your feelings change, I'll know it instantly if they do." His eyes sparkled. He entwined his fingers in mine, and amongst his many happy emotions, I found confidence there, matched with a steady and constant affection. Maybe they will change. But what if they change for the better, and only grow deeper with the years? I'd be remiss to let a chance for incandescent happiness slip away. He squeezed my fingers, and I felt the bifurcation of two tentacles across his palm. "But consider this, Harry, I can never lie to you. Our relationship will always be rooted in honesty, and there's no stronger foundation for marriage than that." I furrowed my brow and frowned. "There may never be children," I warned him. "Of course there won't. We've already established that I lack the equipment," he said, and his serious expression dissolved into mischief. "But I promise you, our attempts at intimacy will never be boring." And desire raced over his skin with such passion and ardor that I felt a blush rise to my cheek. "Well, yes," I said. "Yes, I'll marry you, Nathaniel Blackwood, and accept whatever adventure comes of it." And so it was that when the priest arrived not 15 minutes later, there were 4 Lovecraft girls at the altar and 4 men to attend them, and such a celebration was had that the people of Dunham County spoke on it for generations to come. While it was gossiped that my husband was a recluse in all respects of the word, rarely seen by the Lovecraft family and never by the villagers, the children at the library claimed I had been spotted on rare occasions, walking across the foggy Dreadmore Heath in the company of a gigantic kraken. None of the adults believed them, of course. We're much too far from the sea for such exotic creatures. But the children also said, by all accounts, I was holding the monster's tentacle in my hand and, in its terrifying company, looked to be the happiest of all the Lovecraft girls. Who am I to quarrel with that? I do believe I am. The end. There you go. I hope you enjoyed it. I had so much fun reading this to you. Thank you so much for watching this far, I guess. I think this was more than 10 hours of video, so thanks for sticking with it. Have a great day. I'm hoping to read more in future. Maybe I'll take a few days off, but I'm looking forward to coming back and reading more to you later on. Yeah, stay safe, stay healthy, get lots of rest, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much.